Good one. We'll get started, ladies and gentlemen. We're resuming the committee meetings for the 22nd of April 2025. And this is the committee meeting for the Environment and Sustainability Committee, being the third committee meeting for 2025 on the 22nd of April 2025. Meeting commenced at 1:02 p.m. All councillors on the committee are in attendance, I believe. So no apologies. And I'll do the acknowledgement of country. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of our proud people. Present, Councillor Madsen, Councillor Augustine, Councillor Jonik, Mayor Teresa Harding, Councillor Doyle and Councillor Antonelli. Are there any declarations of interest? There being no declarations of interest, I'll move on. There's no business outstanding. So the first item of business for us to deal with is confirmation of the minutes of the Environment and Sustainability Committee second meeting for 2025, which was held on the 18th of March 2025. Could I have a mover for those meetings? Councillor Antonelli and Councillor Jonik, thank you very much. Any discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is officers' reports. And the first report is the Waste and Circular Economy Transformation Directive quarterly report. This is a quarterly update report on the continuing implementation of the Ipswich City Council Waste and Circular Economy Transformation Policy Directive. As outlined in the attachment to the report, it's a significant body. This significant body of work continues to be implemented against the 10 principles of the directives. Do any councillors or mayor have any questions of the relevant council officer? If there's no questions, I'll ask for a mover. Councillor Madsen? Yeah, Councillor Augustine moved and Councillor Madsen second that. Any discussion? Yes, Mayor.
If I may. Thank you, Chair. Council made the decision back on the 3rd of December 2020 to adopt this directive to indicate a change that this council would have in regards to how it would deal with waste and the circular economy. And so I do look forward to these updates, and I note that the recruitment is underway for an additional compliance role to help drive better compliance within the waste industry through improved programs and enforcement action. I also see that sustainable procurement has been earmarked for delivery this financial year, which will be prioritising local and ethical suppliers, assess environmental and social impacts, and employing life cycle analysis to support the City Council's emissions reduction and environment goals. So I encourage residents to have a look at Council's website to see the new infographics and the fact sheets that explain the purpose of this work and our achievements to date. I also note some of the key matters being the change of state government and directive, and thank you to the council for approaching the new Director General of the department to see if we can make some more headway in that area. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for outlining the nature of the directive and the importance of the directive, Mayor. Do any other councillors wish to make any comment? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda is a bit unusual. It's item 3 on the agenda, which is the Australian Government Flood Warning Infrastructure Program. This is a report concerning the Australian Government's Flood Warning Infrastructure Network Program and the proposal to acquire gauges owned and operated by the Ipswich City Council. Does anyone have any questions of the relevant council officer?
Yes, if I may.
Okay, well, if the relevant council officer, I've got Matt Pinder. G'day, Matt. Can you just say your name and your title?
Good afternoon. Matt Pinder, Disaster and Natural Hazards Manager.
Councillor Antonelli? Sorry, no.
It may be the way I'm reading the report, Matt, but I just note in recommendation A, it says Council owned and operated flood warning infrastructure be transferred to the Commonwealth, in other words, the Bureau. And yet, as I read the report, it says that we are the owner of 43 of these gauges, but the Commonwealth will take ownership of a portion of them. So is the recommendation too broad in that it seems to read that it's all of the assets rather than just a handful? Or is this a progressive thing that they will do?
It's a progressive piece. So what they're looking to do is acquire strategic locations that inform how they do their flood forecasting. So there are locations that they're not interested in, and we would maintain and continue to provide that service to the community. Because the program runs over 10 years, they only take a number of gauges each year. And at this stage, they've only said that there are 2 that they specifically would like to take, subject to council approval, prior to 30 June 2025 this year. What they would then do is then come forward at different points and go, okay, what do you think of this location? Could we take ownership of this? And I suppose the recommendation's written in a way that first, A, just allows that the transfer of assets. Part B would be around the operational piece, delegating to the CEO, making sure there's appropriate governance around how the sites are selected, what are their implications, if any, for the community. So an example of that, some of our gauge locations are co-located with water monitoring probes, right, which the Bureau of Meteorology would not take on. So we would have to have, say if they identified a location like that, we would need to negotiate with them to go, well, we don't think this site is suitable because of this reason, or we will maintain that part of it, but you can bear the costs, the operational costs of the gauge itself. So, and that would be through that Part B recommendation process around the CEO having the operational delegation to be able to go, okay, do these meet criteria? Is it in accordance? Is there no degradation of service to the community? So you'll note in one of the community and consultation piece, there is intended to be no degradation to the community. And what I suppose that Part B is through that operational thing is making sure that those service levels maintain the same when they transfer, or if they transfer from council to the Bureau of Meteorology.
Okay, so my next question is, at the moment, those 43 gauges, they're not listed on the BOM site, are they?
They are.
Oh, they are?
Yep. So under the council pursued post-2011 quite an aggressive expansion of the flood warning network in the LGA. Under the Federal Act, we have to remit that data to the Bureau of Meteorology. So that data is already on the Bureau's website. And it just poses, say, for example, David Trumpy Bridge is an example. Council owns that gauge, we service it, we make sure the data feeds are correct, and the Bureau puts that on their website. What they're proposing, I suppose, is that streamlining, going, okay, for these really strategic gauges, does council have to wear the operational costs of maintaining that equipment, being specialists in something? You know, we don't have, and I forget the person, hydro check. Yep. It's a special word that's very familiar with those things, so we have to contract that. There's operational costs in doing that every year. We then have to depreciate that as an asset on council's, profit and loss or income statement, sorry, and then that flows through to the balance sheet. Every time it floods and those gauges get damaged, council has to put that in the capital program, rebuild. Under this proposal, for the gauges that transfer, we would no longer have to do any of that. So it would, first of all, save council costs, direct costs, but also indirect costs such as those depreciation elements and administrative burden, whilst not changing the service level for the community.
And we're confident that the BOM is going to maintain the same standards we do?
$236 million is what the Australian government's allocated over 10 years, and the Queensland government is also around some of the maintenance with QRA looking at that. So I would suspect, whilst there's never any guarantees, there would be a fair bit of feedback provided, should that not occur.
So essentially, if all these gauges are already on BOM, we're not going to see any significant change on what would be the appearance on the BOM website and our dashboards and the like.
No, from an end user point of view, you wouldn't even know.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Augustine, did you? Good. Just a couple of questions from myself. What was the time period that they'll take over the full number of gauges? Or approximately?
It's a 10-year period.
10-year period.
They're 4 years in. Queensland's the target state. So as a state, we have fairly good, a better than average quality of our network. So they've targeted Queensland first as the trial to go, this is how we can learn from it and do it across the state, across the nation.
And I don't notice any odd structures around the David Trumpy Bridge. Is it really at the David Trumpy Bridge or close?
It's a little bit further down.
A little bit further down, yeah.
Just behind the North Ipswich Reserve.
Oh, okay.
And it's just a straight post, and on the top of it there's a big square with some rails around it, and it's got a huge pipe that runs in.
Oh, good. Anyone else got any questions? If not, I think that's your done.
Yeah, I just come back.
Antonelli?
Sorry, just to the recommendation. So as it currently reads, it does suggest that all of them are going to be transferred. So I'm wondering whether, does that mean that, if they come back in 12 months' time, we have to do another report, or is the idea of this recommendation to go on in perpetuity as they request, we provide? In other words, we're delegating this to the CEO, correct?
Effectively, that's the intent for the 10-year program. If they come back in 4 years and say, we want X gauge and it meets the criteria and we're comfortable that it's not any degradation of community service, council's interests are looked after, then the CEO would be able to execute that.
I'm certainly happy to make that accordingly. So,
Thanks, Councillor. I don't think there's any other questions. I think you're free now, Matt. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, the recommendation is that A, the council-owned and operated flood warning infrastructure network assets be transferred to the Commonwealth of Australia Bureau of Meteorology. B, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to undertake all necessary arrangements to facilitate the implementation of recommendation A. Can I have a mover for that, Councillor Antonelli? And a seconder, Councillor Jonik. And is there any further discussion? Oh, Mayor, far away.
You have the second. Thank you, Chair. Early warnings are vital for our community to prevent flood-related tragedies, and having accurate and timely information allows residents to evacuate safely and helps us to use our resources efficiently. Flood warning infrastructure is a necessary expense, and I certainly welcome this funding from the Australian Government in helping to share these costs to reduce this burden on Ipswich ratepayers, and I hope they agree to take on many more. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
If there's no further discussion or comments, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thanks very much, councillors. The next item on the agenda is post-tropical cyclone Alfred response and recovery update. This is a report concerning an update on the response and recovery into tropical cyclone Alfred and its impact to the Ipswich community. Does anyone have any questions of the relevant council officer? Yes, Councillor Augustine. If I could have the relevant council officer. Matt again. Yeah, Matt, if you could just say your name and title again, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Matt Pinder, Disaster and Natural Hazards Manager.
Yes, Councillor Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Pinder. I just want to clarify, which I did in the community and sports. I'm just looking at in this report, which is the same dated. The community and sports had 12 affected clubs. This one's got 16 affected clubs. Sporting facilities. I'm just more so might be a question I notice. I just want to make sure that the Southeast Redbacks field is one of these 16 clubs.
Yeah, that's definitely a question on notice. We'll go through and provide that response.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, councillor Augustine?
No, I'm good, thank you, Mr.
Any other
Pinder.
questions from any other councillors? No, there'd be no other questions. You're fine, Matt. Thank you. The recommendation is that the report be received and the contents noted. Could I have a mover for that one? Councillor Augustine, and a seconder? Councillor Antonelli. Any further discussion, Mayor?
I can.
Yeah.
Obviously, I chair the Local Recovery Resilience Group, and obviously you deputy chair that.
Yes.
So we've been at all the same meetings, Chair. So while we're very lucky not to be more severely impacted by this disaster, this report does show there was, sort of damage across Ipswich. It was mostly minor, but when every day that those roads aren't open or the bridge isn't open, it does impact people and our residences. And we do see that there were 35 private properties that were impacted as well. And these residents are able to apply for the disaster recovery funding arrangements or financial assistance for personal hardship assistance and the Essential Services Safety and Reconnection Scheme as well. Chair, Council is also applying for reconstruction of essential public assets funding. And as chair of the Local Recovery Resilience Group, I met with the State Recovery Coordinator, retired Colonel Justin O'Connor, and the Deputy State Recovery Coordinator, Peter Maddock, to discuss our city's recovery program. And I also met with the District Disaster Recovery Committee and the Economic and Roads and Transport Functional Recovery Resilience Group, that's a mouthful, isn't it, to ensure that we are sharing information and working well with other levels of government and other stakeholders on our road to recovery as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Is there any other comment by any other councillors? If there's no comment, I'd put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? Unanimous. Thanks very much. Next item on the agenda is notices of motion. I don't have any notices of motion. I should have said carried. I don't have any notices of motion or matters arising. I'm not aware of any questions or general business unless any councillors have any questions or general business. I'll close the meeting at 1:18 on the 22nd of April 2025. Thanks, committee members.